My name's Dylan Storer and I'm appearing as a private citizen.
Thanks, Dylan. Although the committee does not require you to provide your evidence under oath, I wish to advise that this is a formal proceeding of the Parliament. Giving false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as contempt of Parliament. These proceedings are being broadcast and also recorded by Hansard. They're public proceedings, although the committee will consider a request to have evidence heard in private. If you object to answering a question, you should state the grounds of that objection and the committee will consider the matter. I will now invite you to make an opening statement, but you can rest assured that we've read the submission that you've provided in advance, and then we'll proceed to questions. So, Dylan, over to you.
Thank you. Some may call me naive, but I still believe in the power of democracy. I believe that the Parliament should be an accurate reflection of the diversity and the views of the Australian people. Personally, I believe that the changes the bill this committee is investigating is an important change that will strengthen Australian democracy well into the future. In Australia, we treat people in their later teens as being in a transition period to adulthood. That's because we are. A good example of this is that people aged 16 can get a learner's permit. I'm on them myself at the moment. Once you're age 17, you can go into your P plates, and then at 19, you can be issued with your open licence. This ensures that drivers will be responsible, they know the road rules, they've had adequate time in vehicles before they're issued with their open licence, and how to operate a vehicle. So it's the same for our defence forces. You can join at 16 and 6 months. There are restrictions on what you can do until you're 18, but the fact remains that we can volunteer and serve our nation in the Australian Defence Force at this age, further sort of adding to that theory that is currently active in Australia, that those final 10 years are sort of a transition period into adulthood. You know, we can also have sex. 17-year-olds are treated differently by the criminal justice system to other youths, and we can work and pay taxes. I'm currently employed in 2 jobs. So the rationale behind this is to transition into being a responsible adult citizen of the nation. I don't think any member of this committee would argue that having a responsible citizenry is a bad thing. That's really why I believe in extending the right to vote to 16 and 17-year-olds. It's been scientifically proven that we possess the cognitive ability, and that's been noted in this committee as well in the past, to be able to cast an informed vote. Scientifically, there's no reason as to why we should be deprived that right. In my opinion, it will strengthen faith in our democratic institutions, within the long run, provide Australia with a more informed voter base. I recently went overseas with an amazing organisation, UN Youth Australia, as part of the Emerging Leaders program. Myself and 15 other young people from across Australia and from all walks of life travelled to China, South Korea and Japan. We met with law firms and Australian diplomats, including the Australian Trade Commissioner to Shanghai. While we learned about Australia's relationship with Asia in the Asian century, we also learnt a lot about each other and ourselves. I and the 15 other young Australian delegates all came from different political ideologies. In the group, we had members from the Labor Party, we had members from parties of the Coalition, and we also had members of the Greens. These people come from big cities and regional and remote areas. I'm never going to forget the conversations we had on a number of issues, including international relations, economics, the environment, education, and more. We had disagreements, but I can honestly say, with no offence, we discussed and debated different points of view more openly, honestly, and respectfully than I've ever seen in Parliament. I left that trip with a renewed hope for our world and for Australia. I have faith in our future thanks to the young people of today. You see, personally, I see no reason as to why any one of my fellow delegates on that trip should be denied the right to vote. I see no reason as to why any young Australian should be denied the right to take part in our democratic processes. And young people across this nation are willing, ready and able to cast their ballots and to have their say. Young people like myself no longer want to be disenfranchised. We really want to be an active part of the democratic institutions that can build a better, brighter future for all Australians.
Thanks very much, Dylan. Over to you, Senator Steele-John.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you so much, Mr. Storer, for that opening contribution. Can I seek your view on the question of compulsory versus non-compulsory when it comes to this issue?
I'm not as for or against it. I normally, traditionally, am against people that sit on the fence, but I very much am on the fence on this particular issue. I can see benefits from both sides of the debate, whether it should be compulsory. I think having it non-compulsory would further enshrine the idea that people in their later teens, 16 and 17-year-olds, are in that transition period to adulthood. So I think that having it non-compulsory would sort of enshrine that across the board. I can also see the benefits of compulsory voting in Australia more broadly. So I think it's something that should definitely be explored. I would support a bill to lower the voting age to 16, whether that was compulsory or non-compulsory. I think that it's an important issue within itself. I think that having it non-compulsory would further sort of enshrine that the later teen years are sort of a transition period to adulthood. Yeah. I think it would help that.
Fantastic, thank you. And can I also just seek your view, whichever form we end up with, do you think it's important that we take a different approach to the question of whether or not you're fined if we did go down the compulsory vote route?
Look, I think, legally, people under the age of 18 are still under the care and supervision of their parents and guardians. So I think you'd need to make special consideration when it came to people not being able to vote and the particular circumstances surrounding that. So I think overall there would have to be different sort of circumstances. I personally am a believer in having compulsory enrolment to vote across the board. I think everyone should be on the electoral roll, and this bill sort of touches into increasing voter participation in outside of the 16 and 17-year-olds having the right to vote. But I think that they should be treated differently simply because they are simply under the sort of authority of their parents or guardians at that time, and that can still have an impact as to whether people can even make it to the ballot box. So I think there should be differences made there.
And that comes to the next question I was going to ask you. Obviously, living in Fitzroy, how much acknowledgement do you think we need to take of the additional challenges that face a young person attempting to cast their vote in the non-metro areas of our country?
Yeah, so people, we overall have, and other majority Indigenous areas of Australia have traditionally low voter turnout and low voter participation, even sort of low enrolment when it comes to that. So I think that having a reduced voting age, number one, will help sort of introduce the concept of voting, because I've had little to no experience of civics education in my public school here in Fitzroy Crossing. So I think lowering that voting age will increase participation, but there are extended challenges for people across the board to be able to cast their ballot. So I think that the Electoral Commission and the Electoral Commissions are doing a great job in trying to get more people involved. I think this bill will definitely help, especially with the on-the-day voter registration.
Awesome. Thank you. That'll do me.
Yep. Thanks, Dylan. Look, just a couple of things. I won't go over the compulsory, non-compulsory one, because I think you've given very thoughtful and considered evidence on that. Can I just do two things? Congratulate you on your written submission, but more so on your presentation today, which was stunning.
Thank you.
Not often the three of us agree, but on this I think we speak with one mind.
Would you like a job as an MP, Dylan? Can we make that happen?
The next inquiry will be on not just lowering the voting age, but the age of taking up office.
Yes. Why don't you ask that question, Dylan? Why don't we ask if we're lowering the voting age to 16? What's your view in relation to lowering the qualification of seeking elected office from 18 to 16 as well?
Have you got a view on that, Dylan?
I have thought about it in the past. I think that overall it should probably be reduced. The age of participation to be actually elected to Parliament, I think that's something that definitely can be looked at. It would probably have to be looked at with a different lens. At the same time, I don't want I don't sort of advocate for people under the age of 18 to sort of. I don't want to see someone stop attending school to become an MP. I think that it's important that people stay in school across the board. We need to sort of keep that education system as strong as possible. I think that if it is reduced, we should definitely look at reducing that, but it would have to be looked at with a different set of eyes.
Thanks, Dylan. I've just got one question for you. I just want to pick up on the very last thing you said in response to Senator Steele-John when you commented on the civics education you'd received. And I think I heard you correctly in saying that you haven't received any. Is that right?
So I haven't received any in my school I'm currently enrolled in. I previously I was enrolled in the School of Isolated and Distance Education, doing distance education here in Western Australia. Overall, a great thing for isolated students in Australia. We did receive some civics education within that realm, but in my opinion, it wasn't adequate to what you would expect in another school environment. That isn't sort of distance education, and I don't particularly know how you would go about it differently. But definitely in my experience at my current school, which is Fitzroy Valley District High School, that there isn't any civics education at the moment. And that doesn't mean that students there aren't politically active. I think there's sort of there's a difference there. Students within that school are very much active when it comes to issues that directly affect them. There was people that have attended protests, especially when the WA government was proposing closing down a number of remote Indigenous communities. So issues that impact people directly, people are generally fairly active about them. But I see that there being a disconnect between the civics education that's provided to them to be able to then go in the future, at the moment, at 18, then go and cast an informed ballot. And then if this is reduced to 16, I think that it would be a big disservice to our democratic process to not include some form of increased civics education.
Yeah, well, thanks very much. I agree, and it's something that's been a really consistent theme throughout this inquiry, and I think I can say that while we are dealing with a narrow question about a formal right, I think all of us on the committee are concerned about ensuring that everyone is able to effectively exercise that right on their terms, which means looking at civics education. So thanks for raising that with us, and thank you for your evidence today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We look forward to reading about you shortly.
Thank you very much.
Please be our PM within the next 10 years.
Thanks very much, Mr. Storer. And I think we can now take a short break and reconvene at 1:45. Thanks very much.